Happy Labor Day. I'm Charlie Sykes. Sunday Insight starts right now. Good morning and welcome to Sunday Insight. In the week that was, more email troubles for Hillary Clinton as speculation rises that Joe Biden might jump into the race. The Packers end their preseason on a high note, beating the Saints at Lambeau. Tom Brady beats the NFL suspension in the Deflategate case. A Kentucky county clerk is jailed after refusing to issue gay marriage licenses. More attacks on police officers lead critics to ask whether we are seeing a war on cops. A new report says that more than 300,000 veterans may have died waiting for care from the VA. Donald Trump signs a so-called loyalty pledge saying he won't run as a third-party candidate next year. And County Executive Chris Abele says he has no plans to run for governor in 2018. But we start with some very good news. The triumphant return to Sunday Insight of our longtime panelist and friend, Mikal Holt. In the last 22 years that we've been on the air, Mikal has been a fixture, our one regular panelist. And he is back after 11 months. Welcome back, Mikal.
Yes, it's good to be back.
Where have you been?
Well, contrary to popular opinion and rumors, I'm not dead. Yeah. But I came very, very close to it.
You did.
After completing a show this month, a year ago, I found myself in a medical crisis. I've been feeling bad, just feeling strange for a couple of weeks. And one particular day I realized I couldn't remember anything that happened the previous week. And then I tripped up a flight of stairs, so my wife demanded, well, I mentioned her, I thought maybe I should go to the hospital.
Good idea.
So she called an ambulance, and the next thing I know, it was 5 weeks later.
You were in a coma for a full month.
Right, it was a medically induced coma. I had an infection that was just spreading throughout my body, and it was cutting down organs, kidneys, lungs, and at one point, the physicians called in the family and said that there was nothing they could do. And they suggested that maybe they should pull the plug. But as you know, my wife is a very religious woman, and she said no, and said, well, pray him out of this. And my sister's a minister, my brother's a minister, my brother-in-law's a minister, my mother's a minister, my uncles and cousins are ministers. And they came and they just held prayer vigils. And as I learned later on, there were people praying, I don't even know how the information got out, there were people praying all over the country. And 30 days later, I mean, I wasn't healed, but at least I was out of the coma.
Well, and it's been a long recovery because I said you've been gone for 11 months. You were in the hospital for what, for a whole 7 months? And I have to tell you, I knew at that point when the doctors were saying they couldn't do anything more, and I had talked to your wife that morning, and it went on the air on this particular show and gave a really nice tribute to our friend Mikal Holt.
A eulogy.
I'm afraid that some people thought that was an obituary, but I mean, honestly, I can't tell listeners how remarkable it is to be sitting next to you, because there was a long time when I did not think you were going to make it back here.
And I don't fully appreciate what I've gone through, and I have to say thanks to my wife, because even after you get out the hospital, I was wheeled in a wheelchair. I mean, she had to bathe me, clean me, change medical supplies, the whole ball of wax. I mean, my entire family. I mean, I think I probably had more people visit me in the hospital than anybody I know of.
Now, people are going to look at you and they say, "Hey, you look pretty good." So, are you back to your old self? Has it changed? I mean, how do you go through something like that without being changed?
I don't think you can. And I mentioned to you candidly that, although I've always considered myself to be a Christian and a good Christian, I didn't believe in the power of prayer. I was kind of like a Gnostic Christian or a deist. But after this experience, James Causey did an article when I first got out, and he said, he was an intern with me when he was 15 years old. He said, I now carry my spirituality on my shoulder. And I guess that's true, because now I fully embrace, prayer and the power of prayer. And as the Bible says, two or more call my name, which they did. It may not have been about me, it might have been about them. They didn't want me to go. And I think God responded to that. So now I actually find myself preaching a little bit, you know, and I talk to people about having God in their lives and the importance of that. But you know, it's
you're kind of in bonus time too now, aren't you? I mean, you have a little bit of bonus time. Do you feel more of a sense of purpose, or like trying to figure out what that is about?
Yeah, you know, several ministers and several other people, laymen, said that it wasn't my time. That I still had much more to do. You know, and James Crosby and I were talking, and we said we're the only 2 black columnists in the entire state of Wisconsin. So somebody has to get our side of the story out. And I mean, this has been a forum. Because I heard your ratings went down when I was gone.
Yeah, it was just crushed.
But, I mean, you don't know how significant it is for my recovery to be back here. I started writing in the hospital, writing my column, and that was a real effort. It's hard to still get thoughts together. But
you've been keeping up on things too, haven't you?
Oh yeah.
I mean, this is you have no shortage of opinions.
When you're laid up in the hospital 24 hours a day,
right,
you tend to read a lot.
So the last 11 months, I sort of imagine you sitting in the hospital and you're yelling at the TV screen saying, "Why isn't anybody saying this?"
A bunch of times.
Yeah,
a bunch of times.
And so now you're back and you get to be able to do this.
Oh yeah, and even though I think I'm immortal now, so maybe I can say what I want to say.
You've always
I have nothing to lose
you
now.
have always said what you wanted to say, Michael. It is good to see you back, and we're going to go next on Sunday Insight. We're going to bring back our panel, and we have to ask what is happening with Scott Walker's run for the White House, and Mikal Holt is back on the panel. Another rough week on the presidential campaign trail for Scott Walker. His poll numbers have dropped, and he seems struggling to gain traction. Last week, he came under fire for seeming to suggest that he was open to the idea of building a wall across the northern border, something he quickly disavowed. But last week, the super PAC supporting him announced a huge $9 million ad buy, which should help his numbers. But the question is, can he turn this thing around? Now, joining me on our panel this morning, the Milwaukee Community Journal's Mikal Holt, former State Representative Michelle Litchens, defense attorney Dan Adams, and the managing editor of RightWisconsin.com, Colin Roth. Colin, we'll start with you. Can Scott Walker get his mojo back?
He can, but it's going to be awfully difficult. And the addition of the super PAC dollars into Iowa and some of those early primary states ought to help bolster some of his numbers. But some of the mistakes and missteps he's made in the last month have really gone to the core of his brand of being a bold, decisive leader, somebody who you know he's for something. These things on immigration, to the wall, all those things have chipped away at that, and it's been really tough for him.
Okay, what do you see? You've been watching a lot of television?
Too much. I think his biggest problem is all of the Republican candidates are on the defensive. They're responding to Donald Trump. And Jeb Bush, at least, is attacking now with some very interesting ads as well. Scott Walker has to separate himself from the pack. But part of the problem is all the Republican candidates are essentially saying the same thing. So how do you separate yourself?
Well, you know, we are focusing on Walker, but I mean, you talk about, Jeb Bush, Marco Rubio, all of these guys have been sinking in the polls. All of them are struggling to get any traction against Donald Trump. But I was reading this Politico analysis that said that, Scott Walker had the worst summer of any of the candidates, and in part it's because, he rises to this, the national prominence by being, the firm, unintimidated guy, but then he takes 3 positions on every issue. And so how do you turn that around? Media narrative, very negative. He has made these missteps. What does he need to do to get his mojo back?
Well, part of it, he has to listen to what you thought about the fact that he always says yes and agrees with the reporter before he answers the questions.
The verbal tech.
Exactly. And in Wisconsin, we kind of, I didn't even recognize it until you had brought it to the forefront. We're like, oh my goodness, that's exactly what he does. So he doesn't really agree with the reporter, but he says just because that's what he says. But I think what's interesting here is that Scott Walker was #1 in the polls because he was Donald Trump. The nation thought he was the guy who stood firm, said what he thought, didn't care what everyone else thought about him. He did what he thought he needed to do. And then Donald Trump has kind of done that better. He's louder. He's a little bit more angry about it. And I still think Scott Walker's got a chance.
I guess I disagree with Michelle's characterization of why he was popular. I think he was popular because he was safe. He was the kind of guy that you could leave your daughter with. Somebody who checked the bingo sheet on every conservative issue, and you would flirt with the other people, but ultimately come home to this safe guy. But with these gaffes, he's proven that maybe he's not that safe. He's not the, in case of emergency, break glass and have your safe down the line conservative candidate, because he can't be trusted on kind of simple questions. Should there be a wall on the Canada border?
Well, this is the verbal tick that Michelle was referring to is that it is a Walkerism, that somebody will ask him a question and he's sort of on his disciplined talking point, but he will nod his head and he will say sure, absolutely. He's not meaning to answer it. However, I think there is that more substantive problem. He's been chasing the Donald Trump positions. He's saying things that I don't sense that he is comfortable with. He's out of his comfort zone, and therefore he is all over the place on issues like immigration and even abortion. So let me play devil's advocate just slightly on all of this. The first vote is not cast for 5 months. Are we overanalyzing these poll results right now? I mean, 5 months in politics is a very, very long time. And do you think that 4 months from now Donald Trump is still going to be leading in the polls?
Well, that's the big question.
Yeah.
And I think the Trump rise has caught a lot of people by surprise, and his staying power has caught people by surprise. But you're absolutely right. There's a long time between now and when votes will be cast. I think people make a little bit different decision when they're actually in the voting booth rather than who they think is the flavor of the week at the moment. But yeah, we're going to go through a lot of issues and a lot of media cycles.
Yes, out Trump.
You can't out Trump.
Well,
he's Midwest nice.
If he can't, then he better set his sights on 2020, and he can run against Conway West. That might be a better, easier opportunity.
Okay, here's the deal. If Donald Trump is a serious candidate, then there's no reason why Kanye West wouldn't be a credible candidate. I mean, have we actually entered into a period of kind of the Kardashian Trump era of entertainment politics?
That's how Donald Trump got in there, though.
Well, that's what I mean. Is this a flash in the pan, or are we actually seeing kind of a fundamental shift?
Well, the other interesting thing is you may have non-viable candidates who have a super PAC behind them.
Yeah.
And back in the good old days, these candidates would kill their campaigns, endorse the more viable person, and they'd have a strong candidate to take on the opponent. Now you have these kind of zombie campaigns that could, just rear their heads forever.
We're also in the land of Twitter. People read Twitter. That's how they get their information. Now people don't read books. They don't read magazines and long articles anymore. So I think that's why Donald Trump, again, is kind of the fancy of the day, because he says those one-liners, and Joe Voter out there who really doesn't pay attention to the specifics is like, oh.
I've confessed this. I honestly don't get this. I mean, the guy, is going to insult his way into the into the White House. I mean, will it get old? Will it wear out?
If you believe in America, it has to get old within the next 5 months.
Well, I still think that if Scott Walker is going to, be able to turn this around, it is the sort of the safety candidate that you look at the last man standing, that these guys will burn themselves out. The thing that Walker still has going for him, he's still got a lot of money, he's still got a pretty solid record, and his approval rating among Republicans is still extremely high. He and Ben Carson are the guys who have the highest approval rating, which means that even though, right now we're talking about, a lot of people are writing him off, come next year when, in fact, you are looking to break that glass, who is the safety guy, he still might be there, but his margin for error, I think, is now pretty much close to zero. Now, you may not want to hear it, but we're going to tell you anyway. Let's hand out some unsolicited advice, and Mikal Holt, you are first.
Well, mine is to Mayor Tom Barrett. Congratulations on your decision to arm police with cameras. My advice is to closely analyze any policy that allows police to use their discretion as to when and where to turn them off and on.
Michelle Litchens.
To the Bucks owners, do not cave to the so-called Alliance for Good Jobs. They claim to want a $15 minimum wage for the new Bucks Arena employees. That's not what their real goal is. They want to increase union membership and dues, and they'll hold you hostage.
Dan Adams.
Well, my advice this week is to anyone concerned about public safety, and along with what Michael said, pay attention to the body camera debate. There's now broad consensus on cameras for all police. Let's make sure politicians don't screw up our privacy or government accountability as they work out the details.
Colin Roth.
My advice is for conservatives. Don't look for your own strongman. Don't look for someone to move us beyond the Constitution in service of your own views. We're a nation of laws, not men, and the Constitution still matters.
Well, my advice is if you are a county clerk who does not support gay marriage and does not want to issue licenses, either recuse yourself and let your staff do it for you or resign. Your oath of office actually means something. By the way, the same thing goes for officials who don't want to enforce immigration laws. Next on Sunday Insight, the disturbing gang video played in a Milwaukee County courtroom. What does it tell us about what's happening on the streets? More shootings and more murders in Milwaukee, and this disturbing video showing guys flashing guns, wads of cash, and taunting cops, all within blocks of a police station. The video was shown in court, and Police Chief Ed Flynn says it amounted to gang propaganda, which it is, but this is scary stuff. What are we seeing here, Dan Adams?
Well, you're seeing that Kardashian celebrity culture
with guns
on the street level, and I'm kind of amazed that no neighbor, you know, this was a cul-de-sac type situation in the neighborhood. No neighbor said, "Hey, there's a bunch of kids with guns and lots of money playing their music."
Would you be brave enough to walk up to somebody with an automatic machine gun and tell them, "Put your guns away because my kids are watching"? These people are afraid, rightfully so. These are thugs. These are terrorists. And it's this underground economy.
And they're not afraid. They were not afraid. They're just a few blocks from a cop station, and they're doing this in broad daylight.
Now, they're the ones, don't worry about, you know, these peaceful demonstrations. Worry about those thugs. That's who you should really focus attention on, because they are the ones who will shoot cops.
And look at the wads of money that they had in their hands. Who's going to go out and get a $12 or $15 an hour job when they're walking around with that kind of cash for selling drugs in the middle of the day?
Yeah, and I just can't help but feel sad for the people who live in those neighborhoods trying to get by, and the children who try to go to school in those areas.
Yeah, but I think that, you know, Michael's point is, look, these guys, they look empowered, they look like they own the streets, and it really is hard to imagine what it would be like to be in that neighborhood and to expect that they're going to call the cops or they're going to do something about it. What would you do if you were seeing these guys? Because, I mean, it was pretty obvious. I mean, these guys, they are not intimidated. They are not afraid. They are, and they're prepared to do whatever it takes. And I think that the judge made the right call in showing that in open court.
Well, yeah, Carolina Stark, who's a good judge.
Those are not your clients, right? None of those guys.
Not yet. No. But she did the right thing. She punished this guy, the guy who's sitting in the seat with his wad of money. He's in prison now.
So what is it that you don't get this week? Let's go around the table. Mikal Holt, you're first.
Well, what I don't get is how Fox News can call Black People Matter a hate group when that so-called news organization peddles hate by supporting groups like FAIR and the American Family Federation that supports the KKK. Incidentally, Black People Matter is a movement and a theme, not an organization.
Michelle Litchens.
Okay, don't laugh, but what I don't get is why the feminist left went into a tizzy on Twitter denigrating Kermit the Frog because he broke up with the voluptuous feminist Miss Piggy and is now dating a slimmer, younger pig.
Dan.
What's going on at the River Club of Mequon? A member sticks his hands down the shorts of a 20-year-old employee and no one calls police. Instead, management works with that member to try to buy her silence. Yuck.
He was a lawyer, by the way. Colin Roth.
What I don't get is how progressives are cheering on the jailing of a Kentucky clerk, Kim Davis, while they celebrate government officials who ignore drug laws or immigration laws. I'm not saying she's right, but spare me your preening about the rule of law.
Well, what I don't get, Donald Trump wants people to see him as a strong leader who will make America great again, but then why does he whine so much anytime that he's asked a tough question? Next on Sunday Inside, our panel picks the winners and losers of the week, but first, here's your morning news update. It's time for our panel to pick the winners and losers of the week, and Mikal Holt, you're first.
Well, I'm going to be a little selfish. I'm the winner this week because 11 months ago, there were those who said I wouldn't make it, but thanks to your prayers, I'm here. I'm also the winner because today is my anniversary, and if it wasn't for my wife, I wouldn't be here because she decided not to pull the plug, and she has taken care of me ever since. My loser, GOP Chair Reince Priebus. If you really think you can control Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump, well, I have some used Ostomy supplies I'd like to sell you.
Michelle Litchens.
My winners are all the laborers in Wisconsin who made the choice to join or not join a union this year because we are now a right-to-work state. Having that choice makes all employees winners. My losers are the political left who continue to see union members as their political puppets. You don't make more money being in a union when you compare job to job, yet that's all we're going to hear this weekend.
Dan.
My winners, Wisconsin's children who are back to school this week, eager to learn. As adults, we all should focus on helping these kids succeed in their classrooms as best we can. My loser, State Senator Chris Larson, who used the first day of school as pretext to send a tacky fundraising email to scrounge dollars and attack other politicians. It's sad that cynical career politicians like Larson use things that should be unifying and joyous for their own selfish political gain.
Colin Roth.
My winner this week is Republican presidential candidate Carly Fiorina, who looks like will make the cut for the next Republican debate. She's an outstanding communicator and a good messenger for the party. I look forward to seeing her on the big stage. It's tough to say this, but my loser is Scott Walker. A tough week caps a tough month. The Walker campaign is in desperate need of a reset. I'm not saying he's done, but the margin of error is shrinking.
Well, my loser, all you guys who want to wear those white belts and white shoes, it's Labor Day weekend and it's time to put them away. My winner was going to be property taxpayers who are going to see their bills go down again this year, but honestly, how can you top Mikal Holt? Back in the saddle and feisty as ever. Good to have you back, Mikal. Thanks for joining us. Join me for my radio show on Tuesday morning. It's on News Radio 620 WTMJ from 8:30 until noon. Have a great week.